Okay. So as people trickle in, which they are, what I'll do is I'll get started just with kind of the formal process of this, and then I'll introduce you guys, and then kind of we'll take it away. One thing I want to do is just give a huge shout out before we get going to the entire Empire team. Dr. Badalato, Dr. Alex Small, Dr. Michael Spigelski, Dr. Jen Nauheim, and Dr. Akil Saji. All these guys put in so much effort, and work into this, volunteering their time to make this happen. So we really hope everyone enjoyed this hidden curriculum series. Hopefully we can continue to provide more. We also wanted to thank the New York section for allowing us to put this on. And Michelle Paoli. Michelle Paoli is the executive director of the New York section, who is the boss. Without her, none of this would have been possible. So thank you, Michelle. And thank you to the three of you for joining us. Before we get started, and before I introduce you guys, I just want to let everyone know that outside of the activity objectives, this activity has been planned and implemented in accordance with the accreditation requirements of the ACCME through UC Irvine. At the end, for those of you who took part in this session, an email will be sent out to fill out a survey, and upon completion of that survey, Michelle will issue the CME credit through that entire process. So again, for everyone that's participating in past lectures and participating today, all of our webinars are on the New York State AUA section website as well as YouTube. So if you can't catch the whole thing today, or you want to catch previous lectures, please tune into those two platforms. So thank you. We are so excited to have three giants here with us today. Dr. Chang from Vanderbilt, Dr. McKiernan from Columbia, and Dr. Lee from Ohio State. I'll give you guys just a brief intro to where you guys came from, but I kind of wanted to allow you guys to kind of expand on it after this. But Dr. Chang is a Vandy guy, did his medical school and residency, Vanderbilt, MSK fellowship for uro-oncology, ended up going back to Vanderbilt and is now the Patricia and Rhodes Hart Professor of Urologic Surgery, the Chief of the Division of Urologic Oncology, and the Chief Surgical Officer of the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center. And Dr. Chang, I know you served in many, many leadership roles. Part of this session will be on kind of talking about those. So I'll leave that for you to kind of discuss a little bit later. Dr. McKiernan, thank you for being with us. El Jefe, he's a Columbia guy as well, all the way through, completed his training, his MD at Columbia, his urologic and general surgery training at Columbia or NYP. And then again, these guys will all have something in common, but they all completed their urologics oncology fellowship at MSK. And again, Dr. McKiernan has a long list of numerous leadership roles that hopefully he can expand on. And then Dr. Cheryl Lee, coming from initially Albany Medical College, then going on to the University of Michigan, where she did her residency, fellowship again in New York City at MSK, went back to the University of Michigan, where she was a professor of urology for many years, and then she came to the Ohio State, where she's currently a professor and chair of the Department of Urology, as well as the Dorothy M. Davis Chair of Research. So thank you all for joining us for this session on leadership and academic promotion. So if we can kind of dive right in, what I'd like to do is just start off kind of on the leadership aspect of this talk, and maybe we can start with you, Dr. Chang. If you don't mind, just kind of give us a little bit about your kind of your trajectory through how you decided urologic oncology, and how you ended up in the various leadership roles, what leadership roles those were, and how you ended up in those roles. And then Dr. McKiernan and Dr. Lee, if you can kind of expand as well on that question, just starting off again.
No, that's a great question. I don't think anybody starts off with saying, well, some may say, oh, I'm going to plan on doing this and this and this. I was just fortunate enough, and I'll keep my speaking to the minimum, because the superstars, I started off by head of the fan club for Dr. McKiernan and Lee. Basically, I was the president of both of those fan clubs for quite some time. First, initially in the New York section, then expanded kind of regionally, then nationally. But that's actually part of it. One of the real reasons that I was able to get certain positions or whatever were because the people who supported me, like Cheryl and like Jim, and like my former chair. And so it started off with a little bit of this is an opportunity for you. And then I think a real step then is taking that opportunity, then doing a good job with it. So there was no set plan of this is what I was going to do within the AUA or the SUO or that type of thing. And I think as much as anything, it's just being a product of having good examples of who good leaders and mentors were. So that's how I got involved in the SUO, involved in the AUA, involved in the ABU, and then things just expanded from that point on. But it really was dependent upon the people that, unfortunately, I was able to develop relationships with.
Right. And then you, I guess, Dr. McKiernan, if you can kind of expand on, to be an effective leader, what do you feel like are the qualities, especially in an academic medical setting, being our leader? What are the qualities of an effective leader? And, how have these qualities changed over time from, let's say, 20 years ago to the changing landscape and that medicine is currently going through? How have these leadership qualities changed over time, if they have changed, and why have they changed?
Oh, they certainly have. I'll start with the tail end of that question. There's no doubt. I think if you ask any of the three of us what we saw as role models when we were coming up through residency and medical school, and what we see now as sort of a successful pathway to academic leadership in a complex health system, very different phenotype. I oftentimes think, what would Dr. Olson do in this situation? And then I do sort of the opposite, not because he was not good at it, but that was a very different context at that time. And based on, multiple factors, the forces that influence academic medicine, the hospital, medical school, regulatory affairs. I think we're generating and need to generate a different phenotype of leader now than we did before, which was really previously kind of a dominant surgeon, very busy clinician who would sort of rise through the ranks of academics based on prolific surgical case series or dominant surgical technique, and then it became more of a corporate leadership role where you had to build teams, collaborate, interact in a more of a matrix health system and do your part, and not necessarily kind of run as your own island of a department or division that just was autonomous and did whatever you wanted. You really would have to be meshed into your system now, and it's a very different job, very different. And I think sometimes people look back and say, "Oh, what did I get involved with here? This is not what I thought it was going to be, because this wasn't what it was when I was in training or when I was a junior faculty member." And probably the same thing will happen to your generation. It'll be different, 20 years from now than what you're seeing now. In terms of how to get there and how we all, our own personal things. So some people speak about their leadership journey. Like if you ask an executive or CEO, describe your leadership journey. When did you get your first shot, and how did you take advantage of that? Oftentimes it's a little fortuitous. I'll tell you that one of the things that Dr. Chang's referred to is the three of us ended up in the same year in a fellowship at a relatively, intense, high pressure environment, totally randomly and, fortuitously, I think for all of us and the people we worked with at Memorial at that time. And then, sort of kept in contact and built a network of friends and associates that really give you a lot of opportunities. Then you have to decide that you want to take advantage of them and execute. So if something comes your way and someone says, "Hey, you want to be on this committee," or in your case, you want to run this new webinar series here in the New York section, and you say, "Yeah, I would really like to do that," then that's the strategic part. Then you have to execute the tactics. Okay, how do you pull it off? How do you do it? And suddenly you realize if you do that reasonably well, then 5 or 6 people take notice of it and say, "Hey, the next time I start some kind of new thing, Miad's the guy I want to run it because I watched him do that thing." And then all of a sudden the floodgates open. And as Dr. Chang and Dr. Lee will tell you, then you have a different problem, which is turning down the floodgates and saying no strategically, like, "I can't do that. That's not available. That's not really in my best interest." And I've told some of the residents this story, but Dr. Latimer was a chair at our institution a long time ago. He asked me when I was a medical student once, "How do you decide what projects you don't get involved with when you're a resident. And I said, I don't know what you mean by that. He said, well, people are going to offer you, research projects, case series, write up this paper, work in my clinic. He said, did you ever think about like how you decide what not to do and what to do? And then you have to figure out how to do it. And I said, no, I never thought about that. Nobody's ever asked me to do anything. He said, well, you better start thinking about that, because people are going to start asking you to do things, and you better realize that your success is very linked to knowing when to say, you know what, that's not a project that's actually doable. It's not really something I'm interested in. That's going to be a disaster. So let me pass on that one, and let me figure out this one. That could be true for a job opportunity, a fellowship, a leadership position. And that's kind of the higher cognitive level of thinking that it's required to be able to put yourself in position for success, I think.
Kind of to expand on that, Dr. Lee, how would you say earlier on in your career, you kind of balanced those when those opportunities were being thrown your way, jumping into this position or this leadership role or, this committee? How did you kind of start to balance those opportunities, make sure that you didn't kind of overwhelm yourself to take on too much?
So first, I want to say thanks, Mia, for inviting me to all the other organizers here of this great hidden curriculum. I'm really impressed with what you guys are doing. And I want to point out that what you're doing is leadership. And part of what is really critically important in your future success is like recognizing your own innate talents and skills, and you're demonstrating it right now by having this hidden curriculum, by, posing these questions and these scenarios and challenging yourself to understand what it takes to advance in academic medicine. And then, working with your peers. I'm so fortunate to have these peers on this panel here, Dr. Chang and McKiernan, to learn from each other, to sponsor each other, mentor each other, and to help each other move along in the field. So anyway, you're already starting to do some of the things you're asking about. And I hope my residents are watching now. So it's a great question about when to say no. And I think along the way, you don't always know when to say no, in part because, as Dr. McKiernan alluded to, for most leaders, their journey was not a straight line. They didn't start out from A saying, I'm going to go to B, and then there were no curves there. And in truth, for, let's say, a resident moving to a fellowship, you're really trying to get to be known. You're trying to meet people. You're trying to understand what your academic niche is going to be, what your scholarly interest is going to be. And so you're very much saying yes to many things. I think it is important to have some guardrails up. I mean, it's hard to say no when you're a fellow or a resident and you're interacting with people who you might admire, who might have been mentors for you, might have been even sponsors for you. But think to yourself, where do I see myself making my niche? What do I really enjoy doing? What do I have passion doing? And what can I stay up in the middle of the night doing if I need to? And you have to think, is what you're going to do, is it going to somehow enhance or enrich that? And it's hard to say no when you're more junior, especially as a junior faculty member. But I do think it is reasonable for you to be transparent and to say, I'm really thinking about this opportunity. It sounds interesting, but I have X, Y, and Z that I also have on my plate. How would you, the person who's asking you to do it, how would you look at this? And how do you think that would contribute to, this scholarly area that I'm trying to build? Because in truth, in academic medicine, what you're building in your successful leadership and in your path to promotion is a story. You're telling a story about your scholarly interests and what you did to build that through education and teaching, through research, discovery, through service and leadership opportunities, and through some of the complex clinical care that you may deliver to improve health. So you're telling that story, and you want to make sure that you don't divert too many times and too far away from the story. Now, you may say, how do you know what the story is? And some of that is kind of what you're learning over time, who you're watching, what energizes you, what you're engaged in. You're not going to have the answers to start out with, but I do think we all have models, along the way, and it doesn't stop when you're, past your early years of training. One of my early mentors was Jim Monty, and I look at some of the characteristics he taught me about leadership, having vision, integrity, really having personal and professional humility, and really trying to develop others. So you wind up looking at those individuals who were important in your training, and you carry some of, kind of their charisma, but you also carry some of what they used to advance themselves forward in your own careers. So anyway, back to the question. That's getting long-winded, but when do you say no? I think when you're clearly, venturing out of the scholarly niche, when you're finding that you're not passionate about something, when you're finding that you already are overwhelmed in terms of your commitments and you're not able to meet your commitments, that's a good time to put a pause on and to say, I don't, and to make sure that you can execute and deliver on the promises that you put forth first. Most groups and people are looking for energetic young minds that are talented. And if you have to say no not nicely, because you may come back to those people in the future. But so anyway, I'll stop there.
No, I think those are great points. I think it's even at this level, saying no is one of the hardest parts. And I think your point is extremely well taken, is knowing, when to say no, and knowing, what you're able to put your heart into fully and what you're not able to put your heart into fully. Because I think I wanted to kind of segue into this. This is a good segue. A lot of, I mentioned this earlier, I don't know if many people were on, but a lot of the junior faculty, when we were assembling this series, they had one of the junior faculty in the New York section commented, I wish I knew more about what it took during the promotional process in terms of, service and leadership and research and teaching. I wish I knew more how to kind of tailor things together, because I feel like my promotion was delayed somewhat. So I guess we can kind of move this, Dr. Chang, towards you. How, in terms of, the leadership opportunities, in terms of teaching, or, research, all the things that go into the promotional process, how would you recommend junior faculty, graduating fellows, best prepare themselves with regards to these areas?
Yeah, I think that's a great question to from my perspective, which would be writing letters of support or recommendation for countless numbers of initial early faculty as they go from assistant to associate to full. And then I think it'd be great to get perspective from both Cheryl and Jim, because they have to help put people up when they think it's appropriate to get the next position. So I wish now I knew a lot about this process. So some key points just off the top of my head. First, and I've never even thought about this, and I should tell our junior faculty, you should ask from your chairman what the specific criteria are at your academic institution for the different tracks, tenure, non-tenure, regarding the areas of emphasis, and have them show you the letter that they send out to your referees. So who are your referees? Your referees are basically people that are asked throughout the country to give you reference. Some of them you actually name, others are basically based upon your areas of expertise, authors and areas, etc. Because every letter I get from different institutions have different criteria in terms of what they consider for promotion. A clinical center like Mayo is very different from an academic center, say at Harvard, or a state institution such as Michigan or Ohio State is different from a private. And so each of them have different criteria. So I think about that early on. I think that's essential. Second, as I write letters for people I know, as well as people I don't know, I am looking for exactly what Dr. Lee said is part of a story that have something I can hang my hat on. As I go through the different areas of research, vis-a-vis education, vis-a-vis clinical expertise, vis-a-vis service to the academic institution or to the university or to the clinic, whatever it may be, I want to be able to say and highlight things that, yeah, are on the CV, but also ring true to those people who are considering your promotion. Mentoring a list of 20 students in education is very different from two students have gone on into the field of urology, focusing on cancer, and have been able to do. So just off the top of my head, as I think about it, I think that the junior faculty, as they go through the process, need to know the specifics regarding the criteria. Secondly, they want to, as they start understanding how they contribute and lead and move on in terms of forward and progression, they need to have certain key points that they want to emphasize in their areas of expertise. Not everybody can do everything. And so that's the last thing I tell folks is you can't, just like I think Cheryl mentioned, it's so hard to do everything well. I'll be honest, you look at Jim and Cheryl, these are individuals, rare individuals that can do basically everything very well. It's really hard, but it's okay to have a couple areas that are really good in a couple areas, and you will still get promoted. So I wouldn't all of a sudden say I'm going to teach 10 med students because my education track is really low. Just know early on, these are areas that are looked at. These are areas perhaps I need to go into. So that's from my perspective as I see people and as I try to support them in their promotion. Because I tend to try to write honest letters. If there are people that I've been asked that I don't really know very well, I will tell the committee, this is not someone I know personally. This is not someone I'm very well aware of, but in reviewing their work and their service, et cetera, there's certain key points that seem to stand out.
Sure. Dr. McKiernan, kind of, and Dr. Lee, if you guys don't mind just commenting from a chair perspective in terms of, operationalizing the promotional process, like how does Columbia use peer evals, dean's evals, chairs evals? How do you evaluate teaching, research, service, not only to the department, the institution, the community? How are all those kind of put together into this promotional process? And we can start off with Columbia and then and see if it, if any of that varies at Ohio State as well.
Yeah, sure. So it definitely varies. As Dr. Chang pointed out, there's no two institutions that are created exactly the same in their process, but the fundamentals are pretty similar. There's generally a committee. At our place, it's called the Committee on Advancements and Promotions, staffed by multiple different types of professionals, usually not many people who are urologists. I actually served on our committee for a period of time and saw it from the other side and had to, vote on psychiatrists and basic scientists being promoted and things. And they have, categories that they look at. Now, this is a topic that our institutions reviewed many times and recently completely overhauled our process, focusing on what we call the applied health science track, or the clinician. So where does a clinician fit into the rigors of an academic medical center? Because it's very different than a professor of chemistry at a university who has a very different pathway, but the rules are oftentimes overlapping. So they'll, if you're coming up for promotion and someone else is in a very basic science mode, then how do you sort of stack up against them when 92% of what you do is direct patient care and you're a primary care doctor? How are you ever going to become a professor at an academic medical center? So they sort of overhauled and reemphasized the fact that service to the institution and excellence within curriculum development, training, education, and service through clinical care are all weighted. They're all valued. It's not just about grants, publications, and the number of presentations given at national meetings. Those are all factors that are weighed into it. And believe it or not, they've actually pushed an educational component of it onto our faculty. And in a few weeks, we're going to be doing for our faculty a full review of exactly what Dr. Chang said. What does it take to go from this to this? What are the ingredients to promotional success within a center? And as the people listening, as they come out and take on new jobs, not only should you be interested in that, you should demand it. And you should demand, if it's not already built in, an annual sort of review of your progress. So if you're a clinician and you're appointed as assistant professor and you're moving along a pathway, your department and their leadership of the department should be responsible for sort of not just saying in 7.1 years, oh, you didn't do any of the stuff you were supposed to, so sorry, you're not going to be promoted. That should be an ongoing, constant mentoring process where you sit down formally and go over everything that they're doing according to, certain milestones, and say, hey, you're a little weak here in the, publications, or it looks like you're not involved in enough committee service. You're not doing anything nationally. And a rule of thumb that we use internally, and it's probably similar to other centers, that assistant professors in general should be able to garner support locally. Associate professors should be able to have a network of support regionally or nationally, and professors should be known internationally. So when those referee requests go out, and I remember when mine went out from associate to professor, it came back and said, you're a little light on the international referees. And this was a little while ago. I didn't really have a big network of international referees. These are people who could, speak intelligently about your performance and your characteristics. They said, come back to us. We need a few Europeans, a couple South Americans. In order to get from here to here, you have to be known globally. And so I sometimes tell people, look, as you're on this pathway, think about that. Like, is your contact and your matrix of associations, is it now a national thing? Okay, well, that means you've arrived. You have publications, you're on committees, you're doing things with people in multiple centers across the country. If most of the people who know you are faculty in your own department, then you're probably not on that trajectory to be ready to go up for like professor of medicine or professor of urology.
And how are each of these weighted in terms of, I'm sure it varies again across institutions, but these referees that write these letters, these evaluations, the teaching and the mentor, I mean, I can only imagine that some institutions very much emphasize research, Columbia being one of them, or, I came from a medical school where research was not as emphasized and teaching was emphasized. How do these kind of fit into that evaluation process? Is this, again, something that is available to the faculty who are going through that promotional process to know, hey, bringing grant money does really matter. You need to bring grant money in, or, you need to have X amount of publications or conference presentations. Is this stuff available for, the assistant to associate to know those types of metrics, as they enter into kind of that setting? Is that stuff available to them? And Dr. Lee, I mean, I can pass, or Dr. McKiernan,
Sure.
you can.
Yeah, I'll turn that over to Dr. Lee, but
Sure.
I'll also.
Well, thank you. I'll take those 20 questions. That's okay. I do want to first say that promotion is really critical and it's important. And it's something that all junior faculty should be looking to do. Some places where people decide, well, I'm not going to go up for promotion. No, you should be thinking about promotion. And a key thing is you have to think about it from the beginning. I agree. I think Sam and Jim both said it, that as a faculty candidate, you should ask the department for their patterns of administration as it relates to promotion, or at least their criteria for promotion. You want to know about that because you want to determine through conversations with the chair and others what track you should be on. And each institution has a different set of criteria, but fundamentally there's a lot of similarities. But within any institution, you may find that for the person coming in, there may be a track available with emphasis on clinical care. And even within that clinical track, there may be several arms. And that's how it is at The Ohio State University, where there's emphasis on the clinical educator or the clinical research or the clinical excellence. And maybe that clinical excellence is that person who's getting referrals from people 2 states over, or they're developing clinical techniques, clinical devices, or really advancing what we think about clinical medicine. So, the tenure track is kind of been the backbone of promotion across academia, but in the contemporary age that we're in, we recognize the importance and impact that clinicians bring to the advancement of our missions in academic medicine. So one, I want to just encourage everybody to really be thoughtful and say, yes, I do want to be promoted, and to talk with their chair, their incoming chair, and decide what is the best track for them and to understand the criteria. The other thing I want to mention is from the beginning, everyone should be keeping track of the things that they do. And because there are several different criteria across institutions and important to the promotions process, if you're doing mentorship, training, talking to students, mentoring students, that's important and it counts, and you should be keeping track of that from day one. If you're working in committees, and that might be in your regional, AUA section, it might be for the national AUA, it might be in your institution or in your department. You should be keeping track of that and what you do and why it's important, again, to your scholarly story. Certainly, it's obvious to people that they keep track of their research and publications and grants and collaborations, but all of the lectures and talks that you might deliver, be they to student groups, to the AUA, to other, to nursing groups, all of those really are important and go to your teaching. That teaching can be to trainees, but also to peers and also to other members of the healthcare team. So it's so important to keep track of those things, because as you get closer to 3 or 4 or third or fourth year review to look at your body of work, it's going to be very difficult to go backwards and to pull all that information together. In fact, one of the things that I did early on was when I mentored a student, I would ask them, or a resident, I would ask them to write a small paragraph of what they got out of the relationship, how was it helpful to them, and just to give me a little feedback. It could, just a paragraph. And we use those kinds of paragraphs of evidence of mentorship and commitment to training and teaching. So please, everybody, keep track of what you do. It's a very common mistake not to do that. In the old days, we used to keep a folder in our drawer someplace and put these things in. Now, of course, you keep a file somewhere, but please keep track of that. Now, getting back to some of your questions about how do you balance all these things? How do you know where to put the emphasis across different institutions? What should you be thinking about? When you think about, I'll just very quickly go through each area. As already has been said, the approach to promotion is one where you're highlighting your impact and your work, be it in education and teaching, and that may be evaluated through evaluations that people have done of you. So when you give a talk and then the organization sends you a summary of evaluations, please save that. That's going to be very important. And that's really an example or deliverable about your education. If you're doing your research, obviously you're keeping track of things like peer-reviewed publications, which count the most, and particularly if you're first or last author. Now, middle author publications are relevant as well, particularly if you're working in a team, or if you're on a high impact paper that involves multiple centers, that's very relevant. But the bread and butter, first or last author, peer-reviewed publication is something that these promotional committees are going to be looking at, and they're going to be counting. The numbers of publications may vary based on what track you're on or based on what institution you're in, but those are going to be kind of the backbone of your scholarly work. Yes, if you're involved in grant, in research, if you have been able to obtain a grant, and it doesn't all have to be a federally sponsored grant or an NIH grant, it can be foundational, could be internal, could be from a specialty society. That shows that someone else valued the work you're doing and was willing to support it. That's really very important. It also goes to the fact that with that support, your work is more sustainable. And that means there's an opportunity to have more impact. So getting even small grants is very important. You have to keep track of that, and you should be noting that. Even when you're doing your clinical work, if you're someone who's seeing a high volume of patients or very complex patients, or you're doing something innovative in the way you see patients, and it's not just the surgical care, maybe it's the delivery of the care, those all are important things to point out about your impact on taking care of patients. So these are the kinds of nuances you shouldn't take for granted. And that service, hopefully that service is also bolstering and solidifying your scholarly story. You know, it speaks to the work you're doing, whether in the community, whether for, you know, the specialty societies or in your own institution or department. It really can support any of the other key mission areas, your research, your teaching, or your, you know, or your clinical work. So I also want to tie in the national or international reputation that the committee will really glean based on your letters that you can get from people like Dr. Chang, Dr. McKiernan, but also the service that you do. If you're on an international committee, that again speaks to your reputation, that speaks to how your peers view you, and that can be very impactful as the committee is reviewing your whole body of work. I don't know if I answered the question. I talked a lot.
No, you did very much so. You expand on every area, and kind of, I don't know, Dr. McKiernan.
I want to jump in there and just follow up one thing there, because I think a lot of people are asking about things like, how many papers do I need to be promoted, which is sort of another way of asking the question you asked. As Dr. Lee pointed out, it's valued, and your role in the project, the journal it was published in, those are all valued, but there's a little fuzzy math. It's not like you tell somebody, hey, you have 31 publications, now you're ready to be associate professor, or whatever the number is. But it's also true that if someone hands in a CV and they haven't actually done anything, and they've never written a paper or been involved in any scholarly discovery at an academic institution, it's going to be harder for their division chief or chair to make a strong argument that they deserve a rank promotion, right? So I think oftentimes today, people coming up through, you know, academic medicine are looking for objective, like milestone-based criteria, like, how come I'm not promoted? Look at how many abstracts I have at the AUA. It's a composite assessment of multiple factors, and there's no specific requirement in any of the categories. But when you start to get comfortable with both writing these letters and watching other people get promoted, you recognize when someone is, you know, eligible and ready to do it, but it's not based on any number, specific number. The other thing I just throw in is that when people are coming out looking at jobs, look at the department that you're coming into, or the group, if it's a group practice or a non-academic group, and look what's gone on before you got there. As Dr. Lee pointed out, it's critical that people move along, but it's actually not that common. There are a lot of stagnant places where people, either the faculty choose not to push their own careers, or more commonly, their mentors or leaders just kind of neglect their development. And that should be a warning sign. Like, if no one's been promoted from assistant to associate professor in the last 5 years in a department, and you're joining it, that's not a great sign of what's going on in that department.
I agree with that. I want to also build on that to talk about the different areas that the promotions committee are going to be looking at. We've already talked about them, but you may be a little weak in one area, but really strong in another. And, you know, you usually probably need to be strong in at least a couple areas, but that'll make up for, you know, some deficits in another space. So don't feel like you have to be perfect to go up for promotion across the board, but you do need to have a story that you're telling and be on a trajectory that's positive in achieving that. So let's say you're trying to go up for, you know, from assistant to associate professor, and you have a strong number of, you know, you have a very strong clinical practice, you've made some innovations even, You've done great teaching, and you have a solid number of papers, but maybe not as many as you'd like. Recognize that there is a range of papers and a range of activities that people who do get promoted have had. So it's a range. So as long as you're telling your story, you're on a positive trajectory, and you have that recognition, particularly if that's a national recognition, then you have a higher chance of getting promoted. And again, it varies track to track what the expectations will be.
Sure. And Dr. Chang, I open up to you if you'd like to fill in anything.
Well, I mean, I'm what you guys don't know what I've been doing is tidbits, pearls. So one of the things that I always do, some of the things that both Cheryl and Jim said was like, holy cow, I should tell people the little thing about what Cheryl wrote about how each of our mentees have given a little summary of kind of the key takeaway points. Those vignettes, in all honesty, 20 years into this process, I have trouble remembering each student, but having that early on in your career as you move, each of those things makes a difference. So one of those things that I learned at meetings watching others is a lot of times I'm talking to people at meetings. I'm not paying attention, but when I'm in a meeting paying attention, and those two things are life lessons too. At certain meetings, you should take the time to talk with people, meet people. Part of that international kind of collaboration is meeting people, understanding, being respectful, and maintaining contact, following up with those individuals. The other time is you trying to learn as much as possible. And one of the things I've learned in meetings, if there's certain ideas that make sense, bringing them home, writing them down, then taking the next steps. Cheryl was talking about writing papers. Something that was taught to me 22 years ago by Harry Herr was every paper you write, you should write 1 or 2 review papers about it, because you're pulling all the data together about advanced prostate cancer or about partial nephrectomies or whatever. You've got all the material, write a good review article. I was like, early on in my career, later on in my career, there are review articles that I put together that will many times can get to higher impact journals that start your process in terms of getting your name out there in terms of recognition. So these are random thoughts, because now what am I going to do with these tidbits? I'm going to add them to talks that I have regarding leadership, promotion, whatever, and I'll say, Cheryl Lee had a great idea regarding this. Learning and remembering from each other, I think, is essential. And so I just got I forgot what your question is, because I was in the middle of my tidbits and pearls. But you should probably address the question in the chat regarding social media, because I'm sure we're going to have a different take on that.
Yeah. I wanted to actually ask you, because all of you have touched on this recognition aspect, and the field of urology is very small. And I've learned that through being on Twitter and going to the meetings. Everyone knows everyone. So how do you guys?
That's not true. That's not true.
A lot of people know a lot of people.
That's true.
Okay. But how do you guys feel the landscape is changing with social media? Twitter is probably the most urology friendly, I would say. But how do you feel like that recognition aspect, you see someone because of their Twitter presence or something like that, and how does that play a role in the promotional process? That's actually a question that one of the audience members had posed. So I'd love to hear from all three of you on this, because you guys are all active on social media, and somewhat active. I saw Dr. McKiernan's.
I don't know how active I am, but I will.
You guys retweeted our thing.
Right. But it's a great point that the individual is raising, is that in contemporary days, you have to continue to think about ways to tell that story, about ways to demonstrate impact, about ways to communicate the work you're doing. And however many years ago, you'd write the paper and expect that people are going to read it, and that's how they're going to really understand it and know it. And today you can write a couple tweets that point out the highlights, and that can really travel. I mean, in the end, we're trying to have impact, change care, improve care. And we demonstrate it through some of these typical historical deliverables, publications, grants, et cetera. But is it meaningful if you say, I put together an educational platform and 10,000 people have been following it. 20,000 people have shared it. That is another way of showing the impact of your work. Now, that's not the only thing that's going to get you promoted, but it's part of the story, and it's another tool in your tool belt to use to advance your work. And also, it's a great opportunity to try to stimulate collaborations, because now there are people all over the world that are looking at what you're doing and they say, you know what, we're trying to do it too, and we're having this problem. Well, what did you guys do? Well, we did this. And the next thing you know, you have an international collaboration, which also means what? International reputation, which also means maybe a request to come and give a talk at an international meeting. That's international service. It may mean, down the line that when there's a grant to put together and, there's a focus on multidisciplinary work or broader work, that maybe you have an advantage. So it's a way to, in my opinion, to really scale what you're doing. So I think there's a key role, but make no, let's not ever forget that a lot of these committees are being run and led by people who are very traditional. And they're going to expect traditional products, but you should be able to expand your voice and your story using social media.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I mean, it's critical to career advancement, networking, collaboration right now. I don't think anybody would deny that. Is it weighted heavily in most universities that you actually have a category that says, how many Twitter followers does Miad have? Oh, he's not ready for associate professor. He's only got 500. Come back to me when you're Britney Spears. That's not in there, but it's going to help you generate the products that are necessary, possibly, as Dr. Lee pointed out, by being active and being engaged. And we have a category of kind of community education. So it came up during our sort of re-evaluation of the process. What if someone spends a lot of time on television? What if someone has an active radio show where they educate the general population on health awareness or screening? These are public health measures done by an MD. What if they write a blog or have a newspaper article in the New York Times that talks about, prostate cancer screening for high-risk populations? What's the value of that? And that is value, even though it's not educating medicine, educating medical professionals, it's educating the world. And Twitter probably sort of falls into that arena as well. People following physicians aren't always other physicians, or sometimes just the general population.
Yeah, I agree totally regarding everything they say. I just have some words of caution regarding, recognition can be positive and negative. I still think there are times that people can clearly, in general, see self-promotion versus promoting ideas and progress. But I think nobody's disregarding the impact of social media. In fact, just the opposite. I think every institution, organization, what do they want to do? Well, we've got to get out there more on social media. We have to make our presence, our contributions, our differences, our differentiators out there. And so I think, it can cut both ways. So it clearly can be a negative, but I think having some presence and being able to differentiate in a positive way, I think is quite beneficial. I think the three of us are more of, I don't want to categorize, I don't want to speak for Jim and Cheryl, but maybe more Twitter voyeurs than actual true tweet person, et cetera, words in terms, but there are others out there, obviously, who have done a lot and contribute and help move the field forward and and present data that's cutting edge from meetings and from publications. That's fantastic. I think it's really great. Um, so I think in terms of the question, I think it is helpful. Obviously, words of caution in terms of being careful with everything that you say, which is, I think, true for every social media. It's something that I try to tell my children all the time, and they kind of pay attention. But it's one of those things that can help you and help an individual move forward.
Sure. No, I think all of you make an amazing point about how impactful social media can be, being cautious, but I think it comes, I mean, our initiative is only as successful as how much it gets out to the public and the people can. And I mean, it all came, and going back to all of your points about mentorship, I mean, it all came with faculty mentors who are part of this Empire initiative. Drs. Badalato and Dr. Small, who are faculty in this process, were very much instrumental in getting this out there, even on social media. So I wanted to kind of segue to this, a couple last questions, just so we don't keep you guys past the hour. Mentorship. I know, mentorship is critical from med school to residency, having mentors to go from residency to fellowship and to become a faculty or a private practice. How important is mentorship through the promotional process? Like, who should junior faculty be making mentors with to help them get through that? And then I would love to hear from all you guys. And then lastly, what were the most common mistakes that all of you have seen from individuals, just looking back, if you can recall any of the mistakes as people were preparing their 10-year portfolios or dossiers, or what have you? What are some of the common mistakes that you kind of want to provide the audience to say, hey, look, I've seen this in the past, please don't do this? So if all of you can touch on the mentorship, who you believe would be a good mentor for junior faculty or fellows going into practice, and then the words of wisdoms, mistakes in the past, and as people were preparing and tried to avoid. I know we touched on a little bit, but if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Well, I'll keep it shorter in terms of mentors who should, I think you should find someone your level. You should find an associate professor, and you should find a full professor. And the reason why I say that is our guys do this together. Hey, what are you doing? How are you, what projects, what do you think? Just about your age in terms of, so we've got people in different fields who have started initially, and they really bouncing off each other. What committees do you think? Then you've got the group ahead who've gone through that process, who can mentor regarding these are things that people have been looking at. And then you've got full professors that give you a little kind of, hey, you can back down on this. And so I like all different levels. In terms of big mistakes, the point that I think Cheryl made regarding there are clearly people who just assume that they can just do this one thing, perhaps do it really well, but disregard everything else. And it shows. And so you don't have to do everything well, but boy, 2 or 3 or whatever is cleared out. I mean, a lot of the institutions will say 2 out of these 3 will be very important. I mean, it's not, you have to be fantastic in everything, but really you've got to be beyond just the surgeon. You got to be beyond someone who just runs and looks at databases and doesn't see one page. You've got to have some kind of breadth and quality. So those are 2. And Miad, since I'm going to let the 2 leaders really speak, I want to thank you for the opportunity. And I learned as much from listening, so that's what I'm going to do at this point.
Oh, well, thank you too.
We're going to give Dr. Lee the final word, so I'll jump in now with a quickie, and we'll let Dr. Lee, because she's the best out of all of us. She's going to wrap it up. But I would say from the seeking mentorship, first of all, what Dr. Chang just said is he learned a lot. Seek out a mentor who wants to learn from you and who benefits from the relationship, not somebody whose arm you have to twist to spend an hour having lunch with you once a month just because they were assigned to you. And a good mentor is actually addicted to the process because they need it, they want it, they live off of it. That's who you want to find. And having multiple ranks would be awesome. If you could find them, if you're in a department, you're lucky enough to have those people at every level, grab them all and don't ever let go. In terms of mistakes, I would say people who try to get promoted or, focus too much on the criteria are probably not going to be as successful as people who seek out the things that they're passionate about and do them really well. And then someone taps them on the shoulder and says, hey, you're definitely ready for promotion. Did you realize that? Like, oh no, I'm just doing my thing. I love all this. I love education. I love doing lab work. And I'm just awesome at it. And oh, am I promotable? That's awesome. Great. As opposed to saying, oh, I need 2 more abstracts this year, and then I'm going to demand promotion. That's not going to work out generally for most people. I'll stop right there. Turn it over to Dr. Lee for the final word.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's always as a pleasure. It's been great seeing you again. And Mian, thanks again for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to get together again. I love these guys. So the mentoring piece, they've said it. You do want to have your mentorship quilt in everything, including promotion. So having someone who's been promoted and been through it, very key to touch base with. But I want to come back to, your chair or your vice chair for faculty. I mean, they should be helping you through this. You know what I mean? They should be helping you from the beginning to tell you what are the kinds of things that are expected. Now, you don't have to focus necessarily on every piece of minutia, but they should be letting you know that, at 3 years or so, we're going to expect you to have been doing these types of things. And in fact, we're going to get a group of faculty in our department together that's actually going to look at your CV and it's going to tell you, about midway through, these are the things you're doing really well. These are the things where there's some opportunities and we should put a little focus on. So I think having some departmental mentorship that's, somewhat formal, in other words, saying, hey, at 3 years or 4 years, we're going to actually look at your CV and say, are you on the right track? And then also thinking about some of the folks outside of your institution. Now, granted, institution, things are different, but some of your peers or others that are going to probably be coming up against some similar types of issues. So take advantage of your peers. Your peer mentors are going to be really important in this process, because even though they haven't been promoted yet, you're all kind of in the same sphere and you're all talking to each other and thinking about things to advance. So the 3 of us were peers, you know what I mean? So we learned from each other. So don't forget about your peers outside the institution. And then common mistakes. I've said this before, but I want to emphasize it. Don't forget to collect information along the way. Don't forget to write things down and just keep track of all the good work you're already doing. Don't forget to really engage your chair or your vice chair for faculty or somebody. Just say, well, what exactly is expected for me to do it? And when should I be thinking about doing this? So that you can just set some milestones in your own mind. Don't forget to just love it. Academic medicine is so wonderful. It's just the opportunity to do what we do, take care of complex patients and make a difference. So wonderful. So don't forget to just love it. And when you do, as Jim was saying, you tend to get involved with things, get involved with people. And before you know it, you're doing a lot of the things that you would do to get promoted. So just, it shouldn't be a painful process, although it's anxiety provoking, but don't forget to just love it. Those are some. What else is a common mistake? Oh, a common mistake. One of the things that I experience is that everyone is so much in a rush to get promoted. Like, I want to get promoted early. I want to go up in 4 years, 5 years. I think a common mistake is not taking your time to enjoy the process of growing in a scholarly way, and saying, yeah, you're going to be on track. And normal is a range of a few years. It doesn't have to mean you're at the cutting edge, the first one to get promoted. So I think that's a common mistake, is thinking you have to do it as soon as you can. You have to be early. No, there's a range that's well expected, and that's normal. So enjoy your scholarly experience and enjoy your family. You know what I mean? Yeah. As you're moving through those early years, don't feel like you can't live your life too. So I will stop there at 8 o'clock p.m.
Thank you. No, thank you for all of those words of wisdom. Thank you all for Dr. McKiernan, Dr. Chang, Dr. Lee for sharing your experiences and your pearls. The honorarium is in the mail. The mail is just very slow. It's very, very slow. But thank you all for coming. I mean, it's 8 o'clock, for volunteering your time. I hope to see you guys in person. Thank you everyone for joining, for all of you guys who have been here through the process. We hope this is a valuable lecture series. The video will be available on YouTube tomorrow, and then the New York State AUA section. So we hope you can